Kamala Harris has a historically bad approval rating. And as The Hill says here, at 28% approval, say goodbye to Kamala Harris being plan B to an aging Biden. So this is something that a lot of people are talking about. A lot of Washington insiders are kind of leaking about, gossiping about. Is Kamala going to be removed on the 2024 ticket? Will there be a primary if Joe Biden doesn't run? Will Joe Biden even run again? But as it says here, she was supposed to be the one-term president's successor, the VP who would take the torch from then 80-something Joe Biden and carry on the administration's agenda. Well, becoming the first woman and the first woman of color to capture the White House as the nation's 47th president. But as things stand now, one has to wonder how Kamala Harris even remains on the ticket in 2024, regardless of who the nominee might be. A new poll finds that just 28% of voters, less than 3 in 10, approve of the job that Kamala Harris is doing. For context, that's 10 points below her boss, Joe Biden. So even though the country's in a terrible place right now and Joe Biden isn't doing anything to fix it, people are still blaming Kamala Harris more than him, even though she has no actual power. People are still like, nope, fuck her, even though Biden is also historically unpopular. So this is bad news for the Democrats. It really is just another sign of the fact that they're increasingly out of touch with the electorate, specifically the working class. And I think that Kamala Harris is just such a personification of that out of touchness. She really represents that coastal elitism that has really come to define the Democratic Party since they did cozy up to big business, since they have, opened their coffers to any and all campaign donations from any and all industry. This is what you get. Someone like Kamala Harris. What's funny about this is that this was so obviously predictable. Of course this was going to happen. Why do you think Kamala Harris had to drop out before a single state even voted? Because she's a terrible politician that could excite no one and knew that she couldn't actually be elected by popular support. She had to drop out before the first state. So why they would choose her after she, had this months-long audition in which she embarrassed herself over and over and over again, pretty much every time she opened her mouth. Ironically, the only time she was effective was when she went after Joe Biden himself in that first debate, who she ended up being the running mate of. So totally hilarious that the Democrats have, put themselves in this predicament. They have no one to blame but themselves. But now they're at this terribly awkward stage where they can't figure out what to do, and there's no good way forward, because you can't leave Harris in charge as the top of the ticket or continue to let her be the heir to the throne, because again, she's historically unpopular. She's hated. There's no way she could win an election between a better candidate on the other side, etc. So that's out of the option. But you also can't exactly just turn around and boot her from the ticket and appoint someone else, because what kind of excuse are they going to make, especially since she was the first female of color to be vice president? Obviously, they were setting her up to be the next president. What kind of excuse could they possibly make to justify removing her and replacing her with someone else? And, sure, they could replace her with someone like Stacey Abrams, who's also a woman of color, but it's just going to create a very messy and ugly situation regardless if they do try to split. So, the Democrats are fucked either way here. And personally, I can't help but find it a little bit fucking hilarious.
Oh, yeah. And I think that this all goes back to the fact that Kamala Harris was never supposed to be the vice president, right? I mean, if we remember back to April of last year, we all basically knew who the vice president was going to be. It was going to be Amy Klobuchar. Amy Klobuchar was definitely the Biden administration's first choice for VP. But what happened in May? Well, there was the George Floyd murder in the cold-blooded murder in daylight in Minneapolis, Minnesota by Derek Chauvin, and that uprooted correctly. It lit a fire under the ass of the entire nation. Everybody from coast to coast got out, protested the police, said enough is enough. We're not fucking doing this anymore in a scale that's not ever been seen in American, organic uprisings. And so they were like, okay, this is going to look terrible for Amy Klobuchar, who also had a mixed record on race throughout her own career. And so now you have, who do we pick? Well, we're trying not to actually do anything substantive about, the George Floyd police reform demands, the demands nationally to defund the police. They're trying to, they want to brush over it. So, of course, they go and play the identity politics card. They get a black woman, not to mention that she was the former top cop of California, not to mention the fact that she supported arresting the mothers of truant parents in impoverished neighborhoods, not to mention that she had one of the worst fucking records on crime. She was a black lady, and that was good enough for them. So they're definitely reaping what they sowed here. They have nobody to blame but themselves, as you said. But I just think if we're trying to understand how the fuck they got here, it was because they made a dog shit decision politically, right? Like, I don't give a shit if it's Amy Klobuchar. She may even be worse than Kamala as far as I'm concerned. She might be more effective. She might be less unpopular, those kinds of things. As far as I'm concerned, they're both odious, neoliberal tools of the establishment. That's not the point that I'm making here. I'm just saying from a political analysis standpoint, the way that they got here was that one critical misstep in May. And you're right, Gavin, they're going to have to lay in the bed that they dug. I think that if there's any possibility that they can get the fucker's corpse out there in an even halfway decent condition, that they just run Biden again and take the fucking L. And I just don't see another outcome for them. Because nobody else can do it. Nobody else can. You put Pete up there. What's he go up to? Maybe 35%, 38%. I mean, you could have a real wild primary, and this is why it's such a bitch that there's no progressive that can come in there and take it with 33, 34% of the primary vote. That's what's maddeningly infuriating, because it all fell apart right at the time when the progressives all fell apart. We don't even like using the term progressive anymore, but.
Yeah, 100%. And actually that reminds me of Kim Iverson's radar yesterday on the Hill. She brought up an interesting point that I actually think might be somewhat accurate. She said the only corporate Democrat that they could switch out for Biden or Harris, they could actually have a chance of performing decently, would be Michelle Obama. And I think that's actually there's some truth in that. And obviously she wouldn't appease the progressive wing of the party at all. I would never vote for her. But when it comes to charisma and just being an effective and decent politician, yeah, I think the Democrats would definitely be wise to nominate Michelle Obama or to put her on the ticket. Again, I'm not endorsing that whatsoever. I think that would be terrible for the nation. And the last thing we need is to just keep going back to the Obamas and the Bushes and the Trumps and, keep these political dynasties going. That's definitely not something I'm advocating for. But just as far as strategy is concerned for the Democrats, that might be their only hope. That was the point that Kim was making. I don't think she's that far off, just given how uninspired and, terrible this new crop of Democratic politicians is. Yeah, if Pete Buttigieg is the best they have, then they're absolutely fucked. No one wants Pete Buttigieg. Remember how literally no one in the South voted for the guy? He was completely disowned and hated by the black community. How the fuck are you going to win the presidency with that? That's a key constituency for the Democratic Party. That's a key voting block of the Democratic Party. So either way, the Democrats are fucked unless they're able to convince Michelle somehow, or someone new comes out of the woodwork that voters aren't familiar with, that ends up, taking the party by storm. But like you said, Zach, the most infuriating part is that, yeah, this is a huge opportunity for the progressives, but seemingly no progressives are going to mount that defense. At least no one's signaling that they will. Here, Pat the Burner, who we just had on our show the other day, says that Kamala Harris' approval rating is at 28%. If she's on top of the Dem ticket, Dems will lose. I would say that even if Biden's on top of the ticket, the Dems will lose. But he says this could be a huge opportunity for the left, but there's currently a leadership void. Did want to remind everyone of Kamala's political prowess here. This is really well demonstrated in this clip. If you guys are wondering why her popularity is slipping so dramatically and why people feel that she's so out of touch with their concerns, let's take a look of just one of many clips to come out recently of just pure and utter unadulterated cringe from Kamala Harris, who seems to be randomly going on this space tour, talking to NASA children and students that are interested in astronomy and all this weird shit. For some reason, her new thing is space. It's previously they relegated her to the border, and now it's space. So yeah, let's take a look at this and hear what she has to say about discovering space.
I just love the idea of exploring the unknown. And then there's other things that we just haven't figured out or discovered yet. To think about so much that's out there that we still have to learn. I love that. I love that. And so I'm very excited about the Space Council. We're going to learn so much as we increasingly, I think, are curious and interested in the potential for the discoveries and the work we can do in space. So that's one of the things I'm most excited about. But the other, you guys are going to see You're gonna literally see the craters on the moon with your own eyes.
Oh my goodness.
With your own eyes, I'm telling you, it is gonna be unbelievable.
I bet these are all child actors again.
Yeah, actually, these are all 100% actors. That was another scandal that came out, was that all these are fucking actors. So she tried to do these like fake skits with actors to try to boost her popularity, like make her come off as more human and relatable. And as a result, her approval plummeted even more. So yeah, this is hysterical. Definitely my favorite thing to come out of the Biden administration is just watching Kamala Harris fall in her face repeatedly. Such a terrible politician. Not that Joe Biden is a good politician at all. The whole ticket is totally fucking humiliating, totally embarrassing for the Democratic Party, and they're gonna have to do something. They're gonna have to do something because this is not tenable. Simply not tenable going forward for them, realistically, electorally. But either way, definitely some funny stuff.
Fucking insanely cringy, and of course this is why, like, I mean, she may be one of the worst politicians to ever ascend to the vice presidency in the modern era.